Hi class, welcome. It's Dr. Lindner. In this video, we're going to be talking about organic compounds. And I'll probably break this up into a few videos where we'll have one that focuses primarily on carbohydrates, another one on proteins, another one on fats, and then nucleic acids, okay? So when we look at organic compounds, they have organic compounds are always going to contain carbon. Okay. And typically we'll see like a long carbon chain. And then at the end, there's going to be some sort of um, functional group that's at the end, but it's like a long carbon chain with a bunch of covalent bonds. And then typically you'll see a bunch of hydrogens saturated. Okay. Whenever you see a covalent bond with hydrogens and they're all occupied by hydrogens, then we'll say they're saturated. Okay. So it always going to contain carbons. The carbons can combine in a variety of shapes. The carbon compounds, they do not dissolve easily in water. And carbon compounds are a good source of energy. And that's why we can get energy from proteins, carbs, and fats, right? Because in all of these, they're going to contain carbons. Now, you heard me mention like a side chain with a functional group. So let's take a look at some of these functional groups of organic compounds. These are important. I probably pick a few questions on a test for these. So test questions will probably come from this, but they're very important, not just to pass an exam, but look at what these do functionally. So first, you have to get comfortable with these terms: carboxyl group, an amine group, a hydroxyl group, a phosphate group. So get very comfortable in recognizing that a carboxyl group has a side chain, whatever that may be, and then you have this, which is the functional group, COOH. Now, this is how it's drawn out linearly, but the structural formula will be COOH, right? COOH is a carbon, an oxygen, and um, a hydroxyl group over here, hydroxide OH. So that's a carboxyl group. And we're going to see carboxyls in fatty acids and when you break down proteins. When you break down fats and you break down proteins, we break down fats into fatty acids. We break down proteins into amino acids. We're going to see these carboxyl groups. And they can act as an acid because they release hydrogen, right? Remember, if this is a little glass and you're releasing hydrogen into some sort of solvent like water, the more hydrogen, then the more acidic, right? When you're pulling hydrogen out, then we get hydroxide. When you add hydroxide into something, you're becoming more alkalinic or basic. So it acts as an acid by releasing hydrogen. So then it becomes COO, right? COO, because you're losing the H. So it's becoming more negative. An amine group, an amine group or an amino group. So this would be the R is the side chain. Okay. You can see on the bottom, the letter R represents the rest of the molecule, whatever that's going to be. That R group is whatever the side chain is, that long group of carbons, whatever it may be. But at the very, very end of that long side chain, if we have this, NH2, nitrogen bonded to two hydrogens, that's an amino group. We're going to see the amino group in amino acids from proteins. Now, proteins can act as an acid or a base. That's the beauty of proteins. They can accept or they can release hydrogen, depending on the pH. So it can act as an acid or it can act as a base, depending on what the body needs. Now we have hydroxyl groups. Hydroxyl is an OH, so again, you have your side chain, a bunch of carbons, and then at the very end, the functional group, OH. Now we've seen OH before. We've seen this specifically with dehydration synthesis, where it pulls this out, and at the other end of the equation, you'll see H2O, right? Dehydration synthesis. When you're going from something smaller and you're trying to get something bigger, you can take a hydroxyl group and a hydrogen from another molecule and get H2O. So it may link molecules through dehydration synthesis or condensation. Hydrogen bonding between hydroxyl groups and water molecules will affect solubility. So where do we have these hydroxyl groups, the OHs? We're going to see them in carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. In carbs, fats, and amino acids. It's quite common. Now, a phosphate group, if we look at this, you see the phosphorus right here, and then we have 4 oxygens. Okay, that's a phosphate group, PO4, P with 4 oxygens. It may link other molecules to form larger structures, but it's also involved in adenosine triphosphate, ATP, right? Adenosine monophosphate, adenosine di, there's 2 diphosphate. If we phosphorylate it again and add another phosphorus to it, adenosine triphosphate. Now, where do we find these phosphate groups, these PO4s? We're going to see them in the cell membrane of the cell, where we have a phospholipid bilayer. So we will see PO4 phosphates in the cell wall, in the phospholipid membrane. We'll see it with nucleic acids. DNA and RNA, the Na is part of the nucleic acid. It's just deoxyribose nucleic acid or ribose nucleic acid. And they're involved with high energy compounds. Okay. Okay, so that's a little bit on the functional groups. When we come back, we will get into carbohydrates.